spoke to us about your service as governor while the legislature was heavily Democratic, and yet you made progress there. The country now is split almost in half on so many issues. How can you get beyond that? How can you help us get the country beyond it so we're not so polarized?
Good question, an important question, and I can only refer back to how I did it in New Jersey. Right after I got elected, the state senate elected a new senate president. His name is Steve Sweeney, and he was the president of the Iron Workers Union. As you might imagine, another shy and retiring type, like me. And he was from the southern part of our state, and I said to the troopers, this is before I'm sworn in, I said, I want to go down to Steve Sweeney's office. They said, do you have an appointment? I said, no, just let's go. It's a 2-hour drive from my house to his office. And I just showed up at his office. And I walked in, and his secretary said, Governor-elect, I don't think the Senate President's expecting you. And I said, no, I was just in the neighborhood, and I decided to stop by. So she said, okay, I'll go get him. So poor Steve comes out embarrassed because he had just come from working out. And he was in sweatpants and a t-shirt and sneakers. It's like, Governor, I didn't expect you. And I said, no, I was just in the neighborhood. He goes, Bull, your neighborhood's 2 hours away. I said, all right, well, I came down to see you. Let's go in your conference room. We sat in the conference room. He goes, what's up? And I said to him, Steve, I got one question for you. I said, for the next 8 years, do we want to make headlines or do we want to put touchdowns in the end zone? And he said 4 years. And I said 8 years. I was right. I said, what do we want to do? I said, because if you want to put touchdowns in the end zone, I promise you 2 things. I will always listen to you. And when I put out my hand and I give you my word, whether it turns out to be a good political deal or a bad political deal for me, I will keep my word. And he looked at me and he said, I want to put touchdowns in the end zone. I said, good. I stood up, I shook his hand. And if anybody in this room, civilian or reporter, goes back and talks to Steve Sweeney today, he will tell them that I always kept my word to him. Politics is still a business of people. And we have dehumanized this thing by not talking to people, but tweeting at them. By not going to dinner with them, but yelling at them in front of big rooms of big people. We've dehumanized it. Some of the best political advice I ever got was from a friend of mine who said to me, he was going to see the New York Times, the editorial board of the New York Times as a Republican. I said, what are you doing? And he said to me, no, you don't understand, Chris. He said, it's harder to hate up close. It's harder to hate up close. So the first thing you do as President of the United States is to spend time with these people. Get to know them. Get to know what their families are like. You're not going to get all of them. Some of them are going to be, awful people, and they're just not going to want to meet with you. That's not anywhere near most of them. On both sides of the aisle. Listen to them. Find out what their priorities are. They got elected too. And then use the bully pulpit of the presidency to persuade, to get the public behind your point of view. And then go in there and negotiate the best possible deal you can to make progress. Ronald Reagan used to say, the guy who disagrees with me 20% of the time is not my 20% enemy. He's my 80% friend. We've forgotten that. And so it's not easy, and it's not guaranteed. But it worked for me for 8 years in one of the toughest states in this country. It's certainly one of the toughest states for a Republican. You need to get people back to understanding that what you expect from us is to put touchdowns in the end zone, to accomplish something, not just go down there and blow hot air and score points on cable TV, and then come back 2 or 4 years later and say, wasn't I great? You saw my speeches. Yeah, no, we didn't do that, but that wasn't my fault. It was his fault. And just vote for me again, everything will be fine. We can't do that anymore. The problems are too big. And more than that, the opportunities are too great to take a pass on spending the time. Believe me, there were many nights at 11 o'clock at night, Mary Pat and I would be in bed, and my phone would ring. And it would be the Senate president coming home from a dinner or some type of meeting. And she would say to you, really? 11 o'clock at night? And this guy Come on. I'd say, I gotta take the call. I took the call every time. Because I never ever wanted him to be able to say that when he had something to say, I wasn't willing to listen. Now, this is also a guy who on the front page of our state's largest newspaper said one morning he wanted to punch me in the head. So it wasn't all sunshine and roses, and we didn't go out to dinner every night, but we got the people's work done. It's harder to hate up close. I've experienced this. Same way Reagan experienced it in California with a whole bunch of unruly Democrats. He understood how to make things happen. You look at his relationship with Tip O'Neill. They disagreed on almost everything, but they found a way to cut taxes. They found a way to save Social Security. They found a way to fix the immigration system back in the 80s. They did all those things because after 6 o'clock, they'd go upstairs to the residence. They'd both have a couple of scotches, and they would sit there and talk to each other. We don't do that anymore. We are not going to accomplish anything as a country by continuing to scream at each other. Believe me, when I have to scream, I'll scream. When I need to be tough, you know I can be tough and you've seen it. But that's not every day, and you got to have more than one club in the bag. In the golfing haven of South Carolina, you got to have more than one club in the bag, and I do. Donald Trump doesn't. He takes his driver to the green.